Hey guys, I just finally woke up after Geek Bowl 11. So let's call this the Season 2 premiere of the Errorogenous Zone. And it is chock full of people who are wrong about geography. 3 people griped in early March about the countries that have land borders with Malaysia, because we didn't include Singapore, which is an island. Not much more to say about that, so let's move on. 4 people beefed in late February when we asked about the countries that border Russia to the west, because we didn't include Norway. So, yes, Norway borders Russia, barely, and yes, the bulk of Norway is west of Russia, obviously. If you look at Mercator or Google Maps, that little stretch of border does appear to run from northeast to southwest, so you can kind of squeeze in a valid argument here. But of course, the Earth is not shaped like a Google map. And if you look at a more realistic spherical projection, with north oriented properly, you'll see that border is actually neatly bisected by the 30th meridian. East. That's right, at the border, Norway is actually north of Russia. It's a feature of Northern European geography that cartographers call the Arctic Reach Around. Finally, let's go all the way back to January, when 4 other knuckleheads insisted that the Gulf of Mexico is part of the Atlantic Ocean, and thus Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas all have Atlantic ports in them. To this I say, just no. For one thing, the phrase Gulf Coast exists expressly to distinguish it from the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. When you cross from the Atlantic to the Gulf, besides just the waves being smaller, there are a lot of other ways to tell you're in a totally different place. There's a hell of a lot more oil drilling, for one thing. There are a hell of a lot more red tides. There are, not coincidentally, a hell of a lot more Republicans. Hydrologically speaking, the Gulf of Mexico is its own body of water, joined to the Atlantic by the Straits of Florida, which are 90 miles wide. Now that sounds like a long way, especially if you're El Duque. But the land circumference of the Gulf is about 4,500 miles, so that gap only makes up like 2% of the total perimeter. In other words, the Gulf is the size of Iran, and the Straits of Florida are smaller than Iran's border with Azerbaijan. Saying Texas is on the Atlantic is like saying Sicily is in the Atlantic. You can say it all you want, it's just not true. So yeah, in summary, the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Coast are different things. And on that bombshell, it's time to say bye. Bye. That was thunder.